Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Vision for a Global Village. It is currently the 3rd of October, 2025, the beginning of fall. My name is Matthew Cappiello. I am here with two of our distinguished guests, including an interview this evening, which I am very excited about. I would like to introduce Mr. Radwan Masmoudi, who is the founder and president of the Center for the Study of Islam and Democracy, one of the premier voices in terms of building open societies in Tunisia, a leading advocate for Tunisia and the Maghreb region and the greater MENA region among American politics. They recently had their 23rd annual conference in Washington, D.C., in conjunction with another great group, the Muslim Public Affairs Council. So once again, good to see you again, Radwan. And with us as well, Ruby Amatulla, one of the co-hosts of the channel. She is the former head of Women in Good Governance and currently a writer and activist based out of Dhaka, Bangladesh. I anticipate a robust discussion. But Ruby, do you want to set us off?
Inshallah. My first question that comes to my mind is that the United States has been very influential. Foreign policy of the United States have been very influential in the world, particularly for the Muslim world. And if we look at, there are some good policies under visionary leaders like Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Kennedy's support for the Algerian struggle was significant. In fact, after the independence, he invited the Algerian president to come to the Washington in the White House. That was the most pompous welcome for a Muslim head of a Muslim state. For those kinds of policies were positive and created a lot of impetus in the Muslim world, encouraged to be independent, to be free from colonial rule and all that. But since later part of the 20th century, the policies have been negative. And since 9/11, the policies are devastating for Muslim countries like for Iraq and Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, Syria, all these places. It says Somalia, Sudan. These are the most affected areas where they are good leaders are nascent democracies have been destroyed, and puppet governments and bad governance, all these things have ruined the societies and all that. But anyway, so my question is that being the citizen of such a country, American Muslims, do you think they have neglected their role in politics? And if so, then what are the reasons? Because politics is the most important field where one can make a difference through policies, rules, and regulations, and all that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Matthew and Ruby, for inviting me to join you in this discussion. I'm very interested in the topic. My background is in engineering. I have a PhD in robotics and mechanical engineering and automation from MIT. But
wow.
I quit my job in engineering 25 years ago to establish the Center for the Study of Islam and Democracy, because I really felt that we must be involved in influencing the policies of the United States, whether domestic or foreign. Of course, at that time, I cared more about the foreign policy of the United States, but now we also have a number of domestic policy issues and concerns, affecting the Muslim community right here in America. So, look, we have to recognize that we are citizens of the most powerful nation on earth. It is the basically the only really superpower left militarily, also economically, and certainly technologically, diplomatically. I mean, it is the only really, it is very, very influential. And this
Mhm.
could be for good or for bad. You know, the influence of this superpower can either be something positive that helps peace, development, justice in the world. And of course, that includes right here in America. Or it can be also a force for bad if we continue to support oppressive regimes, for example, you know, against their own people,
Mhm.
as unfortunately we have done for many, many decades. Or if we continue to give a blank check to the state of Israel to do whatever it wants,
Mhm.
including a genocide. Yani it's unbelievable. But
Unbelievable.
right now, the United States of America, the country that was established based on freedom and human rights and equality and justice, is a partner in genocide, you know,
Mhm.
and is supporting this genocide financially, militarily, diplomatically, and in many ways. As citizens of this great country, I still believe America is a great country, we are responsible for all these policies, whether we like it or not. If we don't get involved, we are still responsible. And by not getting involved, um, we assume even more responsibility because we did not do whatever we can to correct the mistakes, to have a more enlightened policy, whether it's again foreign policy or domestic policy. That's how democracies work. You know, the citizens have to be involved, the citizens have to be organized, and the citizens have to try to influence the policies of the United States or of their country, wherever they are. This is a duty, I believe, of every human being, but especially of Muslims, because even though we are a minority here in America, the foreign policies of the United States affect, you know, all of our countries where we came from. You know, they affect
Mhm.
Pakistan, they affect Bangladesh, they affect Tunisia, they affect Egypt. Um, we are the only ones who can speak up, you know, to our policy makers, to our decision makers in Congress, in the government, in media, in the various think tanks, to 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 inform them, to tell them the truth, to try to enlighten them about uh, why we think what they're doing is wrong, or why we think that the current policies are wrong, why the United States has a duty to support the cause of freedom and democracy and human rights and equality and justice, and that it's also in the interest of the United States to do so. You know, the United States will have more friends in the world, will have more supporters in the world, will build better relations with other countries if we support the values that we believe in rather than support tyrannical regimes or genocidal regimes like Netanyahu. Right now, the entire world is against Netanyahu. The entire world is against what Israel is doing in Palestine and especially, of course, in Gaza, except the United States. You know, and this cannot be good for the United States to become isolated or to become blamed in the eyes of the world for what's happening in Gaza, for example, or for again supporting dictators in Egypt, in Pakistan, in Tunisia, in every basically every Arab country, because they are so-called allies of the United States. We turn a blind eye to how they treat their people. We let them get away with murder. We let them get away with destroying their countries, with corruption, with stealing the monies, with the misleading the people and all that. And at the end of the day, when we continue to do that, we lose the people, we lose the support of the people. They turn against us. And that's why you have anti-American feeling right now, very, very high in the world in general, but especially in the Muslim world. So we have a responsibility, I think, as American Muslims to speak up, to engage in the political process. Of course, it's not easy. And of course, there are many, many other competing voices and competing organizations and all that. But if we get organized and if we get involved, if we get engaged, then we have a chance, we have an opportunity to make the United States better and to make the policies of the United States better.
To make America great again, I guess.
To make America great again. Well, it's a good slogan. That's why he's winning with that slogan, because it's true. America was
But the
great.
wrong policy.
Yeah, but the wrong
It's
policy.
a good slogan, but it's a wrong policy.
Right.
America
was great. America was great when we stood for values, when we stood for freedom, when we stood for democracy, when we stood for equality and justice for all Americans in the United States and for the whole world. That's when we were great.
President Woodrow Wilson understood this very well.
Right.
Even though at that time the world was dominated by the colonial rule, but he saw that if the people are free, particularly people in the Middle East, because Middle East was at that time coming up with oil, and it was becoming a very important place, and he understood that self-determination is a paramount human rights, and it should be for everybody. And he said that by freeing the world, helping the other people in their struggles to be free and stabilize them and make them progressive, prosperous, it is in the best interest of the United States. He saw that 100 years ago.
Right.
And same.
And as an example, Congress established the Woodrow Wilson Center for Scholars here in Washington, D.C. It's one of the biggest think tanks in Washington, D.C., the Woodrow Wilson Center for Scholars, to bring scholars from all over the world to enlighten the foreign policies of the United States and to give us, insight, advice, and knowledge about what's happening in the world, so that we can have the right policies. But unfortunately, right now, this administration has shut down the Woodrow Wilson Center, among many other organizations. The Woodrow Wilson Center doesn't exist anymore. We don't have the benefit of listening to scholars, from all over the world to tell us what we need to do, or to guide us and to help us, to give us reports, to give us advice based on knowledge, based on experience and expertise. So now, we make policies, without really studying the impact of those policies.
And it seems like American culture on the surface might be increasingly Islamophobic. The rhetoric on Fox News appears worse than it's ever been. You go on Twitter, which has become like kind of a far-right rat's nest, and the language you hear kind of scares the hell out of you. But I don't know if what you hear on the news really reflects what's going on the street. So like, they say that like Americans are ambivalent about Muslim politicians, Westerners are ambivalent about Muslim politicians, but I mean the candidate for governor of New York and the candidate for mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, is one of the most diverse candidates we've had as mayor in any American city in the last 1 or 2 decades. Similarly, on the other side of the Atlantic in London, Sadiq Khan is doing great. He's a great ambassador of the city of London. Do you think Westerners, on the ground are really genuinely ambivalent about Muslims anymore, or do you think it's actually a little bit more positive than it used to be?
I think there are two competing trends. I think there is a trend of Islamophobia. It has become a big industry in the West in general and in America, and it is funded by very rich individuals and also by other countries. I mean, Israel is chief among them, but also UAE. Interestingly enough, UAE is a major funder of these right-wing organizations that are demonizing Muslims in Europe and in the United States. Saudi Arabia also the same thing. So there is this industry of demonizing Islam and Muslims, of portraying all Muslims as terrorists and violent and enemies of the states and all that. And of course, Fox News is the main driver, but also, like you said, other social media individuals and organizations and other media organizations. So there is this trend. At the same time, I think that the American people are also starting to learn about Islam. Islam is becoming part of America. Islam is not in the margins anymore. Islam is becoming in every city, in every town, in every village, among the lawyers, among the doctors, among the engineers. We are in a much, much better situation as a community than we were 30 years ago, for example. 30 years ago, I arrived here in the States 40 something years ago as a student. And of course, the Muslims were a very, very small minority. You can hardly see them except at universities as students. The numbers were small, we were poor, and we were not visible. Now I think it's really different situation. Muslims now are everywhere, and young Muslims who were born here, who were born in the States, who are U.S. citizens by birth. So they're fully American. They went to schools. Now they are lawyers, they are doctors, they are engineers, they are young professionals, and therefore they are much more influential and they are much more present in the American society, and people around them and people in an American society in general are also having another voice about Islam, not only what they hear on Fox News, but what they hear from their neighbors or colleagues or friends or people that they see in the streets. So I think you have these two competing trends. Um, and I think the American people as a whole, in general, are very welcoming to foreigners, but also very curious. They read books, they want to find out the truth. They don't necessarily believe what they hear on the news, not Fox News, not even on CNN. People want to, find out the truth and really learn more about Islam or about like Palestine, for example. Why do you have such a shift in American policy, in American mindset about Palestine and Gaza in the last 2 years, despite the
Yes,
fact that Israel basically controls the
the
media
media.
and AIPAC, controls Congress. The American people are waking up to the fact that AIPAC controls Congress, and this is not acceptable to the American people. You have people on the left, you have people on the right who are really very angry at how much influence AIPAC has over members of Congress, and they see it as, foreign intervention and foreign agents controlling the policies of the United States. So I think there are these two trends. On one hand, you have Islamophobia, but on the other hand, you have Islamo understanding, or
No,
understanding.
recent polls
Yeah.
are phenomenal. They are saying, the polls are showing that 60 majority of the Muslims, Americans do not want Washington to give any help, economic and military
Right.
help, to the
For the
United
first
States,
time.
to Israel.
For the
and
first time, and
40%. This is an amazing number. 40% Americans like Hamas, and they do not like Israeli policies. They prefer Hamas over Israel. That's a phenomenal shift. It's a paradigm shift. And I think that is the reason
I
is
don't know
that
about liking Hamas, Ruby. I've heard those reports in the Arab world, in the Muslim world. I certainly did not hear them here in America or in Washington. People in America and in Washington, they don't like Hamas. They like the Palestinian people, and they distinguish between the two. You know, most people do not support Hamas, do not support what Hamas did on October 7th.
No, some of the things Hamas did is not acceptable, but
Right.
as a resistance, as a resistance fighter,
Yeah.
or resistance to injustice, occupation, this
Yeah.
is also part of the also laid down in the Charter of the United Nations, that occupied people have right to resist. And
I'm
if
telling you
peacefully,
how the American are seeing this. The Americans right now, um, the majority, they want to stop aid to Israel because they don't like what Israel is doing. A large number of them think that Israel definitely either committing genocide or at a minimum committing war crimes, and therefore they think that the United States should not support Israel militarily or even economically or anything like that. They support the Palestinian people right to self-government and to be independent and to have a state of their own and to self-determination to determine their own, government and future. But that doesn't mean that they like or they support Hamas, because Hamas is still seen by the majority of Americans as a terrorist organization, or at the minimum as a resistance organization that was involved in terrorism, got involved in terrorism, and that October 7th, there were attacks on civilians, and the American people don't like that. The American people really differentiate between what Hamas did and what the Palestinian people did or deserve, to have.
but
And
you
I
know,
think Americans in general, are much more intelligent than we sometimes give them credit for. Like, just from like a kitchen table issues perspective from my family, like 15 years ago, that my family would say, "You went to a protest about what?" Like,
Yeah,
it
right,
would turn into an argument at the dinner
right,
table. Flash forward 15 years later, and they're like, "I am so sick of Israel. I am so
right,
sick of what they're doing." Like, totally different about face
right,
in terms of how
absolutely.
people view stuff. And I don't think Americans are as easily tricked by kind of the narratives or the tropes that come out of Washington nowadays. I think that they're smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, I mean, they're
so
fully supportive of the Palestinian people. They're very angry when they see young, babies and young children, and older people, obviously civilians and innocents, and I have nothing to do with Hamas being killed every day, by bombs being thrown on them. And now with famine, they don't even have food to eat. They don't even have water to drink. They don't have medication. If they are sick, they can die because they have no medication. And this is totally inhumane and unacceptable to the majority, I think, of the American people. And we've had some very large demonstrations here in Washington.
I,
Some of them, 400,000 people. I mean, numbers that are,
mhm.
Unprecedented.
If this were the
I
1960s, would have
I
been
think that
Right,
um, the Gaza genocide has awakened the entire world and waken up,
right,
and Gaza genocide has started a process of a global correction that I see. It may take a
right.
little longer time, but I think the entire world is realizing, the people are realizing,
But I
the
think the
elite.
question that you asked, Ruby, which I think is the important question, is what is our role as American Muslims? You
I'm
know,
I'm coming I'm
what
coming
can we
to
do? What can we do to stop the genocide? I really feel responsible for the genocide.
Yes.
you know, because it's my tax money, it's my money that's paying for those bombs. It's my
Yes.
money and your money. It's our tax dollars. So whether we like it or
And
not, we
other
are responsible for what's happening, and we are responsible for stopping it.
and many other places. I mean, robbing people, countless people around the world, disenfranchising them, dispossessing them under authoritarian rule and all this,
Yes,
supported by Washington and
yes,
the predatory forces. So what my question and also idea is that Zoran Mamdani and Sadiq Khan, these Muslims, in most difficult places in the world, most cosmopolitan cities, where the majorities are non-Muslims, and they are gaining trust and confidence of the people that they can really lead the place, run the place. And because what I see is that these leaders or these Muslims have are proactive and not reactive to Islamophobia. And
yeah,
they are not, they are staying above the fray of prejudice mongering and fear mongering against the Muslims. And they are asserting themselves as part of the society, and they have right to do the good work in the society. And people are trusting their words and their agendas. And so
right.
what I think is that is what the people, particularly in the young generation of young Muslims in America and in the West in general, should learn from these things, that the most important trait is the courage and determination and the conviction that I belong to this society. I belong where I am, and I have a responsibility to do a good job. That is the call of the Quran, the most
More
important thrust of
importantly,
the Quran.
more importantly, that I care about justice, that I
Yes.
that I care about the poor people or the hungry people or the people who have been victims of any kind of injustice. You know, that's what people are looking for, you know, in a leader who cares about others, who is not just looking for a job to make money. You know, that's not the purpose of life. You know, Mamdani or others could make money, probably more money if they did something
Oh,
else.
yes.
But I want to serve people. I want to help people. I want to protect people. I care about other people, even if they are not Muslim. You know, our obligation is not to care only about Muslims, it's to care about every single human being, you know, and that shows. I think that's why they like Mamdani, for example, is that he cares about these. You can tell that he cares about these things, and the poor people, the unemployed people, the homeless people, and people who are suffering just to, you know, make ends meet, and just to, you know, put food on the table or provide, you know, medication and health care to their children.
It was funny
That
seeing
is that one that is the directive of the Quran also.
Right.
I
That is, that's why the
mm,
Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad, was sent as a rahma lil alameen. You know, it's a blessing for all mankind. It's to establish justice everywhere. It's to make to help other people, to make to be fair. You know, to make the world better place, to fight injustice wherever you find it, wherever it is. It's your duty to fight injustice. Even if the perpetrator of that injustice is a Muslim, by the way, you have to stop him. If the perpetrator of that injustice, it's not because he's Muslim you have to defend him. No, if he is committing a crime or an injustice, it's your religious
yes.
obligation to stop him and to defend the victims, no matter what their religion is. This is a very, very important, I think, principle in Islam. And if we stick to this principle, you will see how the whole world will look at us differently,
it was
especially Americans, of course.
it was funny seeing like the first time I saw Zohran on TV, I was like, I thought he was another one of those just good old fashioned cool DSA progressive candidates coming out of, one of the coastal cities. And
Yeah.
then I realized, like, oh, he's Mahmoud Mamdani's kid. Oh, it was interesting seeing he came from everything from a purely like progressive, populist, pro-working
Yeah.
class perspective, and
Yeah.
bypassed a lot of the initial kind of stigmatization or kind of like putting one in a box kind of politics that
Absolutely.
we've suffered from in the past. So like, but Radwan, I feel sometimes almost like you're a father figure to some of these guys. You've been an American Muslim activist in DC for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
You've dealt with some of the real politic and some of the, pragmatic considerations and, headbutting needed. Like for an up and coming guy like Zohran, what advice would you have for him about how to build political power as a Muslim?
That's a really good question and tough question. I am, in general, very optimistic about the new generation of young Muslim activists, um, young Muslim professionals who care about other issues other than themselves. They care about justice here in America or all over the world. But my best advice to them is, look, don't reinvent the wheel. Learn from our experience, from the older generation. We did many things right and we did mistakes too. You can learn from both. You can learn from what our successes and our failures so that you don't repeat the same mistakes. You see what I'm saying? We don't want to spend another 20 years or 30 years doing the same things that we did in the past 20 and 30 years. And therefore, we will not really advance. We will be like turning in circles. So my appeal to the younger generation is, instead of starting something from scratch or something completely new and and doing what you feel is right, and what you obviously care about and all that, but instead of just doing that, try to also learn from the previous work of others and the previous efforts for the last 20 or 30 or 40 years. What did we do right and what did we do wrong? I mean, not everything we did is right and not everything we did is wrong. So to me, this is really critical, how we build um, we build we maintain our experience and our expertise. We don't lose it. We don't start from scratch, you know. And it's tough because this requires building institutions, because you have to have institutional memory, that remembers what did we do right, what did we do wrong, and how can we avoid the same mistakes, avoid repeating the same mistakes. A very good example, in my opinion, is that a lot of young people, young Muslims, voted for third-party candidate in the last presidential election because they were angry with Biden and with Kamala Harris. And I fully understand that anger. You know, it's not, of course, we all were very angry with Biden because he also allowed the genocide and he also supported Israel, you know, unconditionally.
And plenty of
But
us have institutional memory about what happens with third parties.
right, exactly. There was no institutional memory. And our voting or their voting for third-party candidate is
Trump.
what allowed Trump to become president again. I'm fully convinced of that. And,
Mhm.
and now we are paying the price, because in an election, especially the presidential election, you only have two candidates. I mean, you have more candidates in the primary elections, and there you have more freedom and more choices to, you know, choose your candidate. But at the end of the day, you have only two parties. That's how the system is. Maybe it's not good, but we cannot change the system. That's how the system is. That's how the system works. You have two
Yeah.
candidates, choose the lesser of the two evils. You know, even if both of them are evil, one is a bigger, much bigger evil than the other. Or,
That is true.
you know,
That is true.
so be careful and choose the lesser of the two evils. And I
No,
think that you know, by electing Trump, we made a terrible mistake.
there is another aspect of it, that is during the Bush administration, the Republican Party and the Bush administration also gave a lot of importance to the Muslim voters, because the Republican Party realized that the Muslim voters were united, and they were they exerted a leverage by being united, by producing a voter bloc. And Republican Party was giving a lot of credence to Muslim ideas and all these things, and what they need and what they like. Many experts say that they were very sensitive about what the Muslims feel and Muslims think, what needs to be done for the Muslims and all that. So now that is gone. But now, do you think that for the democratic liberal faction that is emerging as a result of the bad policies in the past, and particularly the Gaza genocide, a group of under like Bernie Sanders, a faction is emerging from the Democratic Party that are more progressive and liberal? And so do you think that the Muslim voters and Muslim would-be candidates and the existing politicians can influence that?
It certainly can. Look, the American Muslims are not all of the same opinion. They are not all liberal. They are not all Democrats. We have a lot of conservative Muslims, and we have Republican Muslims too. And I think that's healthy. I think diversity is good. We have diverse opinions about many of these issues. The main thing is, don't only participate in politics during the election. Usually when it comes to election, it's like almost too late. Yani, your influence is very, very little. You can vote, but you can maybe have influence in the outcome of the election, but there's nothing you can do to change the candidates or their values or their principles or the parties and their values and their platforms. It's very, very important to become involved very, very early on in the process, not only during the elections. Get involved in your local politics, get involved in your state politics, get involved in your local elections, get involved in the party itself. Participate in the campaigns for other candidates and get involved. That's how you exert influence. When you become influential within the party, and you can push for certain issues. You can convince the other members of the party or the other members of your group, to vote certain way, or to put something on the agenda, to change the platform of the party. If we wait until the election, most of the time it's too late. You can't go to the candidate 1 month or 3 months before the election and say, hey, you have to do this for me if you want my vote. He cannot do that. It's too late. The platform is already fixed. He cannot change his views or the views of the party just to win your vote. That's not how it works.
No, and it was great to see, the new stats coming out that we have a few hundred Muslims running for state offices, for federal offices, and we're really starting to develop a better ground game.
Exactly. And that is a good part of the advice that we're trying to give them, is start at the local level. That's how you learn politics. Run for mayor, run for even the school district, the school board. Try to learn how politics works, how you get involved, and how you can influence and shape the outcomes of politics, even at the local level.
I guess it just made people so mad, though. I think that the infamous Kamala Harris "I'm speaking" moment around the DNC, I think, was such a negative turning point for so many Muslims. I mean, to be honest, the Palestinian liberation movement has been more organized and effective than it ever has been in the last decade or two. And Americans are more and more sympathetic to Palestine than they ever have been.
Right.
And it seemed like the politicians and activists talking to Kamala Harris were pretty reasonable. It didn't seem like they had excessive demands. It seemed like they had a few asks that wouldn't piss off too many like special interests. But in the scope of all that, she didn't even say one word about Palestine at the DNC. Like, do you?
No, that's not true. She did say some words. She did speak up a little bit about Palestine, and even in her speech when she accepted, the nomination. Look, this is you're giving me a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The nomination of Kamala Harris, was literally 3 months before the elections.
Yes.
That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. It's too late at that time. That's not how you can't go negotiate. The candidate or the president cannot start negotiating with each group. That's not how policies are made. That's not how the political party makes its platform. You come 3 months before the election and you say, hey, we want you to do this and this if you want our vote. She cannot do that. I mean, I mean, again, I'm not defending her. I think she was not a strong candidate. I think Biden was a terrible president, especially in his second term and in the last 2 years, during the genocide. I'm not defending either one of them. But our responsibility is to get involved in the Democratic Party now, not, 4 years or even 10 years before the elections. Become visible in the political party, in the machines. That's how you change the platform. Like if you are influential in the party, it would not be up to Kamala Harris to let you speak at the DNC or not. You automatically earned your seat because you are influential in the Democratic Party, whether you're Arab or Muslim or Jewish or whatever. You have to you have to you have to earn that position of influence within the party. And again, this applies to both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. We have many Muslims who are also Republican and voting for the Republican candidate, um, because of the
Well,
conservative, the religious values, the family values, that the Republican Party historically has defended, and those resonate with a lot of Muslims. I mean, but
now, granted that what you are saying, but in this crisis moment, and I mean, both Democratic Party and Republican Party both have brought the country to this dangerous situation. Both are responsible. But
yeah,
now what I see as a reaction or as a response to the Gaza genocide and the extreme brutality and cruelty of Israel towards the Palestinian people in general, I see that a liberal faction of Democratic Party is emerging, and they are becoming bigger. They are campaigning. They are forming corps. They are forming and I don't know, in the future, either they are going to transform the Democratic Party as a whole, or they are going to be separated and become another party or something. But I would say that this is a crisis time. This is a crisis and dangerous time where
my
the world is, yes. So where
my
I
point
think,
is, Ruby, is that politics is a long-term game. You cannot gain influence or change policies and politics within any party or within the government as a whole in just 1 year or 2 years. The liberal faction, the progressive faction within the Democratic Party, is still a minority. It's not
I
the majority of the Democratic Party.
It's
Radwan,
also it's also
I,
it's
I
also
have
interesting. It's also interesting. Like sometimes when you're talking to politicians, you'll realize how little they actually know about
Yeah,
certain issues.
right,
Literally
right.
just being in the room, giving somebody a reasonable evidence-based viewpoint on something is enough to, plant a seed and open up their minds. Like, how many times have you been at a Rayburn office building, Radwan, talking to someone
Yes.
about Tunisia and realizing, oh my God, this person knows absolutely nothing about Tunisia?
Absolutely, absolutely. The members of Congress get elected every 2 years. They have an election every 2 years. Basically, they're constantly running for office and constantly raising money and constantly talking to people just to be re-elected because they are re-elected every 2 years. Now, in the Senate, it's every 6 years. It's different. But in Congress, each member is re-elected every 2 years. It's a very bad system because they're constantly
Yes.
running for office. They're constantly fundraising, and that's their main concern. And most of the time, they don't know nothing about foreign policy or about those countries, not even small countries, even big countries. Tunisia is a small country, but most of the time they don't know nothing about Iran and Pakistan, or Turkey or something.
Well,
So
Tunisia
But
fills
there
most of
are,
the weight, though.
but
here's what I wanted to say. First, we need to get involved in the political system at every level, local, regional, national, at every level. And that takes time. That takes years and years to really become part of the system. And that's very important. But the other thing is we need to build institutions. Israel controls Congress because they have AIPAC. Can anyone tell me why we don't have a similar organization to AIPAC to defend?
we have a MAPAC.
Well, but actually, no, but actually, that's an interesting academic question as well. In your opinion, I mean, there have been attempts to create formidable, Muslim lobbying blocs among American Muslims. Why do
There
you?
have been attempts, but not formidable.
Yes,
They have been
they
small
have never been
attempts.
formidable.
Is it
Yes.
in your opinion, has it been mostly just a funding issue? Has it been a factionalism issue? What do
It's
you think is?
it's a number of issues, but obviously, funding is the biggest problem. Most of the Muslim organizations, their budget is 2 million, 3 million per year. And they're lucky, if they're that much, 2, 3 million, 4 million. We give a lot more money to relief agencies, Muslim relief organizations have hundreds of millions, and they are sending relief all over the world, and that's good. But they don't have any influence on policies or and I get really upset about that because relief is not going to solve the problem. Relief is like a band-aid.
No.
People
Yes.
are hungry, we send them food. It's good. We
Wet
have to,
band-aid.
but it's like a band-aid. But how do we solve the problem?
Long-term policies.
Long-term
But
solution.
I have one input here, which is that I kind of disagree with you on the sometimes how America shifts its policies and changes. And I would give you a few examples. One is that America is what I observed is from 100 years of their policies and changes is that facing crisis and difficult situations, America can change really fast. And for example, America was initially very isolationist country, no involvement with the foreign countries and all that. But with few events, and Woodrow Wilson came on the promise that he will not take the country to war. But then within few years, 500 million Americans volunteered for the First World War with the purpose that to
You mean
bring the war the
500,000?
end. 5 million. 5 million. I'm
Oh, 5
sorry.
million.
5
Okay.
million Americans volunteered in response to Woodrow Wilson's ideas of bringing the war to in a shortest possible time, ending the war, and he even said, peace without victory. We don't want victory. but we want peace. And that's why Germany decided to lay down arms within a year to America, not to any European allies. This is, so anyway, what I'm saying is America shifted. The people changed, the leadership changed within a few years' time. Again, just see that I'm coming to more contemporary time, which is the protests that took place in 1960s, late 1960s and early 1970s, has given signal to Washington to change. It's reckless militarism and reckless nuclear arms race, and start dialoguing with the communist bloc. That was the message of the people, that you start diplomacy with the communist bloc, because at that time the policy was no talk with the communists, fight with the communists, containment policies, proxy wars and all that. But think about this, within few years' time, the visionary China policy took place in the 70s, and 72, actually, Nixon went to China, Peking at that time. And in the 80s, the visionary, breathtaking policies of detente with the Soviet Union brought the Cold War to an end in 1989. And then these diplomatic and constructive engagements with the adversaries, that actually was the directive of the people. A few years protests in the street. Globalization ensued. I'm coming. The wave that is generated by the American public opinion, and the opinion working among the American public can generate such a big changes. Globalization started, which is a wave of diplomacy and constructive engagement with the enemy, with the other. It's not only about American China at that time, it was the whole world engaged in that. You trade with your enemy. You engage with your enemy, and dialogue and diplomacy. So that kind of mind shift took place because the American people started these things. I'm saying that American people are an extremely powerful catalyst of change in the United States and also beyond. If the people, so that's where the American Muslims come into play. And I think the American Muslims who are working with the mainstream Americans today can bring about that kind of changes, shorter period of time than longer period. Longer period of time, the predatory elites, I want to say one thing, the longer time, we will not win, because the predatory transnational predatory forces are so extremely powerful today and becoming powerful. The window of opportunity is very short right now. And if we do not act in this window of opportunity, my assessment is that we will be again overwhelmed by the predatory elites. And that was predicted by a very iconic scholar, C. Wright Mills, from Columbia professor, in the middle of at the height of the Cold War. So I'm saying that this is the window where American Muslims should take greater interest, commitment, and determination to engage with the mainstream Americans and bring about and help the nation regain its greatness and reclaim its functioning democracy that it is to have.
I agree with you partly, but not completely. I agree that sometimes there are windows of opportunities where things can change rapidly. And usually these windows of opportunities come during times of crisis.
A crisis.
Yeah, but usually there's a build-up before that crisis that, can be long. The crisis doesn't just happen. It takes years and sometimes decades for that crisis to happen. Even the war in Vietnam, lasted, I don't know how many years, 7 or 8 years or 10 years. So,
No,
you
more
know,
than a
so
decade.
more than a decade. So the end appeared to be sudden, but the crisis has been there for 10 years, and people were trying to change it for 10 years. But at the end, yes, the change can happen very quickly. You don't know when that change can happen very quickly. Nobody knows. That turning point is very unpredictable. Nobody really knows um, when the American public or the American policies are going to change. It could happen very quickly, but if we want to have really impact, we have to look for the long term. We have to have a long term strategy of of becoming part of the system, understanding the system, and learning about how the system works and how you can build that leverage and how you can influence the policymakers, whether it's long term or sometimes short term. If you're not there to influence the policymakers, even in the long term, how can you be there in the short term? You're not even there. You're not even in the room. You're not even in Congress. You're not even in the Senate. You're not in the government. You're not in the think tanks. Even in times of crisis, they're going to make their own decisions. You're not going to be involved. The popular um, uprisings or protests and all that, they're part of the image. They don't always work. I mean, remember the war in Iraq, 80% of the Americans were against it, against the invasion of Iraq and the war in Iraq. 80% were against it, huge numbers. The
It,
protests were huge. Everybody was against the war. But yet the war happened,
it's
and,
just
and
disheartening sometimes it's disheartening to see, like, you think about the founding of the League of Nations or the founding of the UN, which the US was kind of like the leader in the center of holding the scepter, like, and I know I'm being a little bit simplistic here, but the US has been visionary throughout much of the 20th century. It's made a lot
Mhm.
of mistakes, but it's also been visionary. And then you compare that to how the US responded to the Arab Spring. And you're
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
you're like, man, like, if there was somebody who was cooler, who was more future oriented, who was in the president's seat, or like, I don't know. It's disheartening.
Also, I want to go back to APAC. I want to go back to the influence of APAC. It's huge. This is unprecedented. We never had an organization like APAC having so much influence and so much control over the Congress and the Senate. And basically, all the members are scared to death of APAC. If they say anything that APAC doesn't like, they are probably going to lose their job. They are probably going to lose in the next election.
Defeated,
They'll be
defeated.
defeated
But
in the election.
but
So,
then
so this is also another new factor, and I think it played an effect in the Arab Spring, because in the Arab Spring initially, the popular feeling in America was one of exaltation and happiness, and people were very, very supportive of the Arab Spring initially in the first couple of years, but then the coup happened in Egypt, or even before the coup happened in Egypt, the feeling started to change, and the support started to dwindle and to be lost. I
I don't
think
think
APAC,
people.
I think APAC played a big role in that, but not only APAC. UAE has also a big lobby in Washington. Saudi
The
Arabia has
military,
also a big lobby in Washington.
military
Egypt,
industrial complex.
the military, Egyptian military has a big lobby in Washington. So you have
So
all these lobbies,
the,
the influence of all
the
these lobbies that really worked very hard, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, this it's not small. They have hundreds and thousands of lobbyists, and their argument after the Arab Spring was, no, 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 no. The Arab Spring is not, the Arab world is not ready for democracy. The Islamists are going to win, and we have to stop democracy. It's better to have our allies,
A
our
really racist talking point
it
when it
is
comes
very
down to it.
racist. It is very racist. We had in Tunisia, we had democracy for 10 years. We succeeded
yes,
in maintaining democracy for 10 years. It's not a small accomplishment. It's huge. I was
No.
there in those 10 years.
Yes.
But very, very little support from the United
The
States,
West.
from the West in general.
But I think that is squarely false in the APAC, because I know that particular period, Bush administration in his second term took a serious stand to spread democracy in the Muslim world,
Yeah,
and actually forced Israel to include Hamas in the election. And
yeah,
Hamas, actually, this was the president, former President Jimmy Carter was giving an interview, and I listened to him. He said that after 2004, Hamas dropped all military operation and dismantled his military resistance things, and completely devoted in politics,
right.
in
I agree.
software
And they
projects.
announced after
No,
2006
no,
when
no,
they
but
won the election.
let me finish the point.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah,
finish the point. And so similarly, the Bush administration also forced Mubarak regime to allow the Muslim Brotherhood
right.
to be legal and participate. And all these groups, and Hezbollah, by the way, Hezbollah in Lebanon, legalize them, give election to them. These are all contribution of Bush administration. And Israel panicked, the
Yes.
neocons panicked, the APEC panicked. So the 1 year window. No. But let me finish this window thing.
Yeah,
1 year window, within
yeah,
1 year
yeah,
from that time, after landslide victories of these parties,
yeah,
Israel campaigned, and all these groups campaigned vigorously. 1 year, President Bush and his team set back
yes,
and gave relinquish. That was the time progressive people should have come forward. This window doesn't last very long. I'm
yeah,
saying about the window, and I agree with you. Long-term policies are extremely important. Long-term commitments and involvements are, and agendas, goals important. But short-term response is also important. We
yeah,
cannot.
yeah, yeah,
Today, and I am saying that today is that time, and I am addressing the Muslim younger generation, that I am banging my head against the wall, that they come in troops in the there comes hundreds of people participate in election, and the next election and the election after that, 26 and 28, are can be phenomenal. Can be, just think about that. In 26, if we can change the Congress, the policy can change. You are saying that these policies will take decades to change. I say that these policies, with the American people's response and American leadership's response, I think this can change in a very short period of time, because America is a very self-correcting nation. History has proven that. And this predisposition and these characters are still there. We just have to ignite this. And this is a particular time.
Ruby,
This is it.
Ruby, again, I think you're unrealistic in your expectations that things can change that quickly. And let me tell you why. Let's say, I mean, elections are only one part of the process. Elections are only one way to influence the process. It's not. So let's say that all the Muslim voters go and vote in the election in 2026, and the Democratic Party wins the majority again in Congress. What does that mean? It means, yeah, it's going to be better than what we are in now, because Trump will not be controlling Congress like he is controlling it now. But basically, that the people in the Democratic Party, they will be the same people who were ruling the Democratic Party for the last 10 and 20 years. You're not going to have new candidates who are all liberal and progressive. You're going to have
No.
10, but let me finish. It will be better, but it's not going to be really different. We're gonna basically go back to where we were 2 years ago or 4 years ago. So, in my opinion, if you really want to have change, you have to plan, sometimes decades, but at least a number of years. You have to build institutions. You have to have big organizations. You have to
That is true.
participate in the political party. Like you have to have an APAC that has, I mean, another organization that has the same power as APAC. We are not, our goal is not to control the foreign policy of the United States, just to counteract what APAC is
Right.
doing,
Countervailing.
just counterbalance. Right now, basically, they're dictating to members of Congress and Senate what to do, what not to do. And unless we have another organization that can tell them, look, if APAC is not going to support you, we will support you. We will give you money to fund your campaign. They have an alternative. You see what I'm saying?
No,
That they don't.
you are absolutely right, and I understand. But this also happened in the past. That the word that when the wagon starts moving, everybody starts to jump in. And what I mean by that is that not that all democratic politicians are suddenly going to be changing their mind and policies. I'm not saying that. But when they see that Gaza genocide and the world is against the United States, and BRICS is becoming extremely powerful. China and Russia, that bloc is becoming extremely powerful because of the American stupidity. Then a lot of politicians are going to change their mind, and very quickly so, because they know that the next things are going to, and they all also see that American people are changing their mind. So it is all things coming together. I am saying that this is a crisis time that Muslim Americans, young generation, can take full advantage. I'm not, the advantage is not the right word, but act responsibly and come forward.
It is absolutely time for Muslim Americans to wake up and to get involved in politics and to become full citizens of this country and to exert their rights to participate in the decision making and in influencing the domestic and the foreign policy of the United States. Absolutely, it is time. But I think the agenda has to be not only short term, it has to be both. It has to be
long
both.
term, yes.
Yeah. Some short term, we have to ask ourselves, what can we do in the short term? Because yes, there are things that happen next year or 6 months from now that we need to try to influence in the short term. But in the end, building influence, building power is a long-term effort.
Yes,
you have to
I
get
agree.
involved with the idea that they're going to stay in it. They're going to stay in this for the long term. And that's when you really start to see things change. When you have more and more politicians, more and more of the American people really, really starting to change and starting to support peace and justice and equality in America and everywhere. It has to be a long-term project.
Yes, I absolutely agree on the long term, but I'm saying this is a crisis moment and bringing an extraordinary opportunity at the same time. That is, the outside world is reacting negatively against the American policies. American people are acting against the Washington's policies. So it is the whole world is responding to not only the Gaza genocide thing, but American policy and APEC controlling the Washington, and all these things are influencing the American public. So this combined is generating a momentum, giving a short window of extraordinary opportunity. That's what I'm saying, that Muslim Americans should now give extra effort to step forward and also arrange for funding. Money is the blood of anything, election.
Absolutely.
And so American Muslims are as a Pew survey has demonstrated time and again, that Muslim communities' average earning is far above the American mainstream earning. And so there are a lot of wealthy people. They are not putting their money in the right place where the mouth should be.
It is starting to change.
And you start to put there could be parallel to APEC, but the impetus is
there must be.
There must
be. I don't blame Israel for creating APEC. They are defending their rights and they want to influence the foreign. But we have to do the same thing. We have the same rights. If Israel has the right to do this, then the pro-Palestinian people, the pro-justice forces, the Arabs and Muslims are part of that. We have to create a counterbalance. We have to have an alternative to AIPAC that is fighting for justice and equality and peace. And by the way, the American Jewish community, they are our allies in this.
Yes, absolutely.
Most of them are pro-peace and pro-justice and against the genocide.
Against Israel, yes.
And against AIPAC. Most of them. AIPAC represents the far right-wing policies of Netanyahu and his crazy government.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Jewish American families see those rallies that they have outside of UCLA and they're just horrified. The large rallies with the Israel flag waving and all the rah-rah sis boom bah stuff that we see AIPAC sponsors. I think the average Jewish American family is much more nuanced.
And they're becoming outspoken. They are speaking up against what they are seeing.
Much more complex with their opinion on Israel. And
right.
So I guess as kind of a penultimate question, as our time nears to a close, is watching the news nowadays, you see that America's kind of on the verge of a popular uprising. The dam is starting to burst in terms of Americans' opinion on Gaza. We're seeing insurgent progressive candidates, Bernie Sanders, Zohran, AOC, kind of come to the forefront in terms of popularity. So it seems like America's on the verge of kind of a popular uprising. And
yes,
both of you are intimately knowledgeable with the effects of popular uprisings. Radwan in Tunisia, Ruby in Bangladesh. What advice would you have for the American people as they are about to undertake a popular uprising?
It's a tough question.
I know.
Radwan,
I'll let Ruby go first.
Radwan, you go first, and then I will respond.
Nobody can advise popular uprisings because they are very unpredictable. Nobody can predict when they're going to happen or really what the outcome will be. So some popular uprisings succeed in terms of achieving their goals and doing a constructive change and a positive change. Some popular uprisings turn violent and become really ugly, and they don't achieve their goals and create a worse environment in terms of crackdown and in terms of violations of laws and human rights and all that. So, like the popular uprising that happened in the Arab Spring, nobody predicted it. I predict there's going to be more popular uprisings in the Arab world, including in Tunisia, but I have no idea when. It could be in 6 months, could be in 6 years, could be in 10 or 15 years. It's impossible to predict. It's like an earthquake. You know that you live in an area where it's possible to have earthquakes, so you know that there are earthquakes that are going to happen, but nobody can tell you when. I mean, the scientists can tell you that this area is prone to an earthquake. I think that the United States right now is prone to a popular uprising. Tunisia is prone to a popular uprising, and Egypt, and all of the Arab countries. When that's going to happen, it's very hard. The main thing is how do we, as leaders and intellectuals, how do we prepare ourselves so that when the popular uprising happens, because we don't know when it's going to happen, we can lead it and we can take we can orient that popular uprising towards a positive agenda, towards
Constructive.
constructive, real reforms. The popular uprising usually does not have an agenda, doesn't have a clear goals because they're not organized, they have not met. It's just people are expressing their anger in the streets. But it's the role of the leaders and the intellectuals to say, okay, when there will be a popular uprising, how do we reform the system? What kind of reforms do we need to build to make the system better, to address those concerns and that anger that has been building up? And again, that's why it's very important to be involved and participate and not wait until the popular uprising happens. Because when it happens, it's too late. Then you don't have an agenda. You don't know what to do when it happens if you have not prepared for it, years in advance.
Okay, what I would like to say is that by studying American history and the past, what I understand is that American people are very resilient and very open-minded, and they, through the 200 or 250 years of struggle, they have earned or cultivated a culture, a national consensus, or a national core values of the nation that still exist. The predispositions still exist through the struggles, all the struggles that changed this country, also changed the world later on. Actually, the American Revolution, with time, America became a blueprint of democracy, and it inspired the entire world. The French Revolution took place as a result of American Revolution. And later on, I'm coming to more recent times, like collective bargaining movement, women's liberation movement, civil rights movement, fairer immigration movements and laws and all these things. These movements not only changed America, but changed the world. And those started with the American people. So I'm trying to see that where we are in a very potent force, positive force. It is kind of sleeping or in a slumber, but it must wake up, and it is waking up. Very crisis things wakes up. For example, 1929 stock market crash brought America to a Great Depression, and early 30s, America became a beggar state, from the richest state to a beggar state. And Americans were at a loss because there were miles-long Americans standing for soup kitchens. That was the state of the country. Leadership, Roosevelt, FDR's leadership, and his speech in 1936 in the Madison Square Garden that declared war on the elites, the predatory forces that brought the country to that level. He said, I'm going to fight you. And the whole nation stood behind. We need to see this, that changes took place 3-4 years. The change took place. So those momentum we have to understand in America, and it can take place in other places. There are revolutions in China, Russia, that became Soviet Union, and all this happened. But America, when facing enormous injustice, enormous dysfunction, and predatory evil forces try to dominate them, American people take charge. They have taken charge in the past. They are going to take charge again. This is my conviction. And American Muslims are right in the American society. They are a triggering force. I believe that with their values, with their conviction, America is looking for identity. American younger generations are looking for identity, values, and they're said, I want a direction. American Muslims, leaders and thinkers, if they are really, truly good Muslims and visionary leaders, they can now set the pace. I am convinced to this. This is the time. And this rare historic time doesn't come often. So I am appealing to the American Muslims, younger generations, that's come forward, and Muslim communities to be more aggressive in fundraising, in grooming these would-be leaders. This support from the community is essential for American would-be leaders from a younger generation to succeed. Without the support of your ethnic group or your community, you cannot succeed. So I want to end there. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
I agree completely with you. I personally cannot predict what's going to happen in the future, and I'm very hesitant to predict, even based on historical facts, to predict what's going to happen in the future. I don't know. I'm very hesitant. I don't know when it's going to happen. But I agree with you that this is a time to wake up. It's time to mobilize. It's
Time to mobilize.
Time to become engaged, because it's our duty. That's why God created us. That's why we are accountable in front of God. Even if you don't succeed, it doesn't matter. You have to do your part. You have to stand up for justice. You have to defend the innocent people, whether in America or in Palestine or anywhere in the world. That's why God created you. You are accountable for your actions and for your time. You cannot live in America or anywhere in the world and only care about yourself. You cannot. That's not the kind of life that we are supposed to have as human beings, as representatives of God on earth. God created us as khulafa, as we are here to establish justice. That is our mission. We are accountable to God for trying. Whether we succeed or not, I don't know, but you must try. You have to try to establish justice. And how do you establish justice? Of course, it's through politics. The most of the injustices, whether here or in the world, are policies, that created those injustices, and therefore you have to change those policies and make it a better world and make it a more just world. We will be doing a big service to America. We will be doing a big service to the world, a big service to ourselves, because we have values. We stand by our values. And I think this is why we are here on earth. This is why God created us. We are accountable for every minute and every dollar.
Thank you, Radwan. Thank you very much for your input, and thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. I really enjoyed